Website owners commonly ask, how do I know if my website is ADA compliant? And this is an excellent question. But before I answer it, I'm going to reframe it to its practical end. Because when website owners ask this, what they're really asking is, how do I make sure I'm not sued over website accessibility? And so I wrote about this recently in a post titled, How to Know If Your Website is ADA Compliant. Now, there's a gray area here if we look at the law technically. So, the Americans with Disabilities Act, specifically Title III of the ADA, doesn't contemplate modern digital technology like websites and mobile apps. However, the Department of Justice, the DOJ, the regulatory and enforcement agency behind Title II and Title III of the ADA, has consistently taken the position that the ADA does apply to websites and mobile apps. And there are many courts who have also taken this position. So, what this means is that the plaintiffs' law firms who are engaged in serial litigation, who are suing website owners over and over again, have a path to making a claim because they can say, well, the DOJ has taken this position, and then they can also file complaints in courts that are receptive to hearing this argument. So, the best practice for ADA compliance is to make your website WCAG 2.1 AA conformant, or even better, 2.2 AA conformant. So I just listed off two different technical standards, and 2.1 is easier to meet, and then 2.2 adds a few additional technical requirements. But overall, it is not easy to meet all of these technical requirements unless you have put in a significant amount of real work, a real manual work. So you can't, there's no automated solution, there's no automated way to make your website ADA compliant. You have to actually put in the work and to fix issues in your code and with your content. So with your content, think of your text, think of your images, video, audio, and documents. So that's what you need to work towards, is full conformance with these with the WCAG 2.1 AA technical standard, or you can take it one notch further and go with 2.2. But 2.1 should be sufficient. All right, so now what happens is a lot of people fall under the lure of scans. And so people confuse scans with ADA compliance checkers. And this is in part because of the messaging that comes out. So some people think if they get a Google Lighthouse score of 100%, then they've made their website ADA compliant, which isn't the case at all, but can lead to you being sued because you are under a false sense of security that your website's in great shape, when it's really just you've done is pass these automated scans, which the scans are nice, and it is one of the things that I would do as a first step, is to make sure that there are no issues that can be flagged by a scan. But this isn't the end point. It used to be. Years ago, plaintiffs' law firms simply relied upon scans. If a scan returned issues, it was as simple as that. Then they would file a complaint or send you a demand letter. Now it's not close to that easy, and that is why I referenced the technical standards, is because you'll want to meet at least one of them. And I say at least one of them. If you meet 2.1, if you meet 2.2, you will meet 2.1. These technical standards aren't that confusing. It's just when there's a lot of terms thrown around, it can seem confusing. But just know that WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are technical standards, and there are different versions of these technical standards. I've given you the two most recent. 2.1 was published in 2018. 2.2 was published in 2023, and 2.2 conformance level AA just adds a few additional success criteria or technical requirements. Some of these technical requirements you likely already meet, others you're going to have to work towards. And for the more advanced the more advanced issues, you are going to need someone who has a web development background to work on your website. But just having a development background, just because someone's a web designer, it doesn't mean that they know accessibility. This really is a specialized subset of knowledge, so keep that in mind. All right, so to actually reach full conformance with these technical standards, what you will need is an audit, because with an audit, we find all of the issues. Remember, I talked about scans. Scans only flag a few. Uh, it's not a few. Scans actually flag several issues, but it's not nearly enough. So scans, think of scans as flagging about 25% of the issues. And the reason I say flag is because scans aren't conclusive. They're usually right, but they can have false negatives, and then very rarely you'll come across false positives. But the point is that we don't rely upon scans. It's great if we have 100% score on a scan, if there are no errors or alerts showing, but that's not the end game. The end game is full conformance, because that is best practice. Now, just because your website is not fully conformant with one of these technical standards does not mean that your website isn't ADA compliant. But the problem is that plaintiffs' lawyers are really the ones who are practically, they're the ones that are enforcing the ADA, in the sense that they're enforcing this interpretation. The actual legal standard is meaningful access, but how can what does meaningful access mean? Different people have different interpretations, and that's why I say the best practice is to just go ahead and go with full conformance, because these are highly referenced technical standards that we look to for web accessibility. Now, continuing down this post, there are there are some accessibility issues that are more commonly claimed than others, and so that's what I've included in my ADA compliance course. Is I take you through. I actually prioritize the issues that come up the most, that are claimed the most often by the most active plaintiffs' law firms. I take those issues, I tell you how to find them and fix them, so that you can reduce your risk as you're working on accessibility. Compare this with just going through a WCAG checklist and working through these different issues, versus prioritizing those issues that are most likely to lead to a lawsuit. So it's really nice in the sense that as you're improving accessibility, you're reducing your risk of being sued. And it's just a natural progression. The more of these heavily claimed issues that you take care of, just the less likely you are to be sued. And so here I have the three of the most frequently claimed issues, being alternative text, missing alternative text for images, keyboard navigability issues, and then missing form field labels. Those are among I think at least the top seven. Those three. Continuing on down, another best practice is to have an accessibility statement. This is going to be a link from the footer of your website. You want to make sure that it is publicly available. And then I have a template on creating an accessibility a statement. So you have a framework to work from. You just customize this template, and there you will have my template that I created. And so I recommend that everybody's proactive with this, because what happens is, still to this day, and as I'm publishing this video on what's going to be April 7th, 2025, there are a lot of website owners who don't realize that this is actually happening. It's not like it's just for someone else. And what's a problem is that many clients only talk to me after they've been sued. And so if that's the case, obviously, right, there's nothing more that you can do. You can't undo the lawsuit, right? The complaint has already been filed. The demand letter has already been sent, but we can limit it to a one and done. And so that's the best possible position to be in, is that you take care of this. And then maybe even if you have a very aggressive defense attorney, then maybe you can even get the case dismissed, or really lower that settlement amount down. And then also keep in mind the non-money settlement terms are also very important. But there is, once you've been sued, then we can't prevent the lawsuit, but we do want to make sure that we prevent any future litigation. We don't want to give these plaintiffs' law firms anything to go on. They are very aggressive. Let me give you an example of how aggressive these plaintiffs' law firms can be. Years ago, I was speaking at a conference, and as I was talking to someone after the conference, and I think this was an attorney, they told me that the plaintiff's law firm joined together with a marketing agency. So think of an SEO agency. I don't remember what type of marketing it was, but the point is that the marketing agency was putting on a webinar to help their clients deal with website accessibility. So they had this plaintiff's lawyer on to speak to the clients, or to speak to these marketing clients, everyone who signed up for the webinar. And what happened is the plaintiff's lawyer, after the webinar was finished, they took the entire client list and sued them all. These plaintiffs' lawyers are very, very aggressive, and this has been going on for years. So, yes, you absolutely can be sued. And if you read on Reddit, all you have to do is search for Reddit ADA website, and you will find that many, many website owners have been sued. And it's not just mid-sized companies, it's not just corporations. We're talking about the smallest of the been sued. Taco stands in California have been sued, right? So it's there. The serial litigation continues on, and I think eventually, I keep thinking that it's going to slow down, and I think it has plateaued, but it's still going on strong even in 2025. And so it's really something that you want to take care of, if nothing else, because I think, well, now that Trump's in office, and we've seen how the how the different administrative activities have unfolded, maybe we won't see an update to Title III, at least not in this administration. But I think it is a foregone conclusion that at some point we will see the ADA updated, so that website accessibility, mobile app accessibility, etc., is required under the law. But as of now, it's still a gray area, but it's not that much of a gray area, because we know what you can do to prevent litigation. And so again, best practice, WCAG 2.1 AA conformance, and having an accessibility statement published. So I'm going to link to this blog post in the description. And then I will also provide a contact page on accessible.org, should you want to reach out to me and discuss moving forward with your maybe possibly an audit, or just consultation, or looking at the ADA compliance course. And so I will also include a link to the course in the description.